here with us to talk about IT security. So hopefully you can all see my presentation now. Today, essentially, we want to take a few minutes to talk about various IT security threats that basically everyone face, and talk about what to look for and how to mitigate some of the threats that are coming your way. So we've entitled our presentation, "It's a Jungle Out There." Again, we are Ideolity. We're an information technology consulting firm, and we work with a lot of nonprofits in the Kansas City area. We are really thrilled to be able to work with Support Kansas City, and we've enjoyed a long relationship with them. So Jenny, thanks again for having us present. So today, we want to talk about the dangers that lurk out there in the muddy waters of the internet. Those are things like phishing and specifically spear phishing. And those are types of email scams that will come your way. We want to talk about viruses and ransomware. And we want to talk about what I call red herrings or implied threats. And those are things that are just as dangerous, but may not actually involve an infection. So I want to start with phishing. Phishing emails are a type of spam email. And I went ahead and pulled the definition here. It's a scam by which an internet user is duped by a deceptive email message into revealing personal or confidential information that the scammer can use illicitly. Phishing emails have become incredibly common in today's environment. And I'm sure that everyone on this call has gotten some kind of phishing email in the last couple of weeks. Ordinarily, spam filters can catch the obvious ones, but many of them sneak through. And that's why it's important to discuss this today so that we all know what we're looking for when it comes to emails that may be suspicious. So I want to talk briefly about what phishing emails are attempting to do and what they look like. So a phishing email, a generic phishing email, is going to try to impersonate a company or a person, generally some company that lots of people are dealing with. So frequently we'll see phishing emails come that look like they're from, say, FedEx or Costco or a bank perhaps. And what they're attempting to do is to dupe you into giving them some kind of information. Phishing emails generally would have some sort of link in them, or perhaps they'll have an attachment. They may look like an invoice, a receipt, or tracking information. That's a pretty common scam. And generally they contain a call to action, and that's important. The scammers out there are trying to get you to react. So when you receive a phishing email, generally it's trying to tell you that you need to take immediate action so that you click their link and fall victim to their scam. Ordinarily, the display name of the email, which a lot of us look at instead of the actual email address, is going to say something pretty familiar, like that it's from FedEx tracking, or maybe it's from the Internal Revenue Service or your IT help desk even, but it's not going to be specific. If you look closer at the email address, you'll notice that the email address generally is not going to correspond with what the display name says, but you may have to look pretty carefully. So sometimes it'll be a completely random email address that is a compromised account from somebody out there in the universe, or it's a made-up account that the hacker uses or the scammer uses to masquerade with. So sometimes, like in the example down here, it's something really, really obvious. It says, your email says it's from Costco, but the email address says Joe Smith at hotmail.com. In other instances, they'll actually create a purpose-built email account for this. And so it may say something like Costco marketing at gmail.com. You can be pretty sure that Costco is not going to be emailing you from a Gmail account. So you really want to look and see if that supposed FedEx email or Costco email actually comes from FedEx.com or Costco.com. So this is an example of a pretty generic type of phishing email. So this is a Costco scam that's saying that there's some kind of problem delivering your order to you. And so the hallmarks of a phishing email are all here. They imitate the look and feel of the organization's emails. So you see that they've got that Costco banner at the top, which looks, pretty close to what you'd expect. It seems to be some sort of automated email you might normally get from Costco. So if you aren't paying attention, you might just fly through this and click the link and continue down the road. But there are a few hallmarks that show why this is not a legitimate email. First and foremost, the email address, like what we talked about earlier, does not look like it's from Costco. So in this case, it's manager@cbcbuilding.com. I would expect a legitimate Costco email to be coming from @costco.com. So you definitely want to check what the email address is. And in your particular email program, if you don't actually see the email address, ordinarily you can hover your mouse over the display name and it'll show up for you. Next, you may not be expecting a delivery when you get this email, so that should be a pretty big red flag right there. But the other thing that you can do to verify whether or not this is legitimate is move your mouse over that link or either of the links in this email. If you hover your mouse and don't click, you should see what the web address is trying to send you to is. Ordinarily, Costco is going to send you to something on Costco.com's website. But in one of these illegitimate emails, I'd expect to see a completely different domain name. Sometimes these emails also contain spelling errors or grammatical errors that may be a tip-off, but that's not as common as it used to be. It used to be that you could spot these things from a mile away based on the poorly constructed message. But we're all in a hurry these days, and all of us make typos, so I wouldn't rely on that as a means of identification. But if it does contain a lot of typos or grammatical errors, you might want to raise your eyebrow a little further. Spear phishing is a type of phishing email that's a little more targeted, and spear phishing can be really dangerous. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about how to identify these attempts. So if you think about fishing as a guy in a boat with a fishing rod out there trying to catch any fish that they can, spear phishing is targeted. It's a guy out there in the river or the lake with a spear, and he knows what fish he's trying to get. So that's why they call it spear phishing, is because it is targeted. What people will do is they will look on your organization's website or any other publicly available information. Maybe that's GuideStar, maybe it's just what they can find on Google. And they will attempt to identify the movers and shakers in your organization that are going to have some kind of financial power. They might target a CFO or an HR person, or even a CEO in some circumstances. But ordinarily, spear phishing isn't directed at your volunteers or someone like that. They'll ask for something urgently, generally. You'll get an email that says, hey, I don't have time to explain, but I forgot to wire this money to somebody. I need you to do it immediately. And ordinarily, they will also say that they are out or busy and that they don't have time for a phone call. So there's a significant attempt to sidestep any verification that you might try to make of who is asking you this. And they're going to try to make the email look like it comes from somebody in your organization that's important and that you answer to. So this, similar to the other phishing email, the display name may say the name of your boss, but the email address generally won't. And it's a good thing to check for. If you reply to the email, they will chances are they're going to reply back and try to direct you down the road of transferring money or buying gift cards or doing whatever it is they want you to do. And they're going to try to get it done as quickly as they can before you notice that it isn't legitimate. It's important to know that they really are trying to create a sense of stress. And that's a hallmark of a lot of the things we're going to talk about today. people under stress tend to not check things as thoroughly as they might otherwise. And so if you get an email that seems like it is just really putting the pressure on you, you should really look at it twice and make sure that it's legitimate. So this is a kind of generic version of a spear phishing email. So in this one, the from address is, the display name is your boss, let's say. But the email address, even though it contains your boss's name, the domain, the part after the @ sign, isn't your company. And in this particular email, you'll notice that there are a few sort of peculiarities to, I'm sorry, my presentation is not going in full screen anymore. One second, I'm sorry. So in this case, I'm just going to keep talking, and my PowerPoint presentation apparently needs to reload. In this case, they're asking for a wire transfer, and they're asking and saying that they are on their iPhone and they need it done today. So already the hallmarks of this scam are there. They're trying to create stress in you. They're telling you that that there is something that hasn't been done that needs to be done, and that they're out in the field and they can't really correspond very well. So they're telling you right here that there is some details that they need and they want to correspond. And in order to do that, they're trying to get you to respond to them via email, because they know that if you respond via a telephone call, that they'll know, they'll know right away that you are not a legitimate person. So again, the same things apply here. You want to make sure that the email address is from the person that you think it is. And we'll talk about this a little more in a minute, but anything that involves a financial a request or something that's really suspicious like this, it's always best to verify with some other means than email. So the next thing that you might run into is actually a hacked email account. So email accounts get hacked when phishing emails are successful. So sometimes you get a phishing email to your email address that contains a link, and maybe you're not paying attention or you don't know what to look for, and you click the link and you're all of a sudden presented with a login screen for your email. It might look just like a Google or Outlook login screen. If you were to check the web address of that login screen, you'll notice that it does not correspond to Outlook or Gmail. But if you're not fortunate enough to have done that and you type in your credentials, then the hacker has gained access to your account. And what they'll do is they will use the account that they hack into to propagate further phishing emails and gather more people's information. So a hacked email is going to have all the hallmarks of a phishing email, except for the fact that the email address is going to look legitimate. And that's what makes them very hard to spot. Ordinarily, they will write what are called rules in the email to prevent the legitimate owner of the email box from seeing any replies. And they redirect those to themselves so that they can correspond with you without anyone else being the wiser. They may try to use this hacked account to spread spam, to spread other phishing emails or malicious links or viruses. We know the tone of people we interact with a lot of the time if they're close, but if maybe we don't know that person that well, it might be harder to spot this sort of thing. It's always good to consider emails to be suspicious if they contain a link that you're not expecting or an attachment that you're not expecting. So let's suppose you get a phishing email and you click the link and you type in your information and you realize with horror that you have fallen for an attempt to collect your information. So what should you do? The first thing you should do is change your password. Change your email password right away, and you want to make sure that you change passwords for any other services or websites that use the same password. What these hackers tend to do is they aggregate a database of people's usernames and passwords, and then they attempt to use that same set of credentials against other major websites. So they may take your email address and the password that you accidentally provided them and go to a variety of banking websites and try that. So it's very important to change your passwords right away. Secondly, you should scan for viruses. Normally, many phishing emails are trying to collect your information and don't always contain viruses, but you want to be sure. So make sure that you run a virus scan on your PC or your Mac. And if you need a little extra help, downloading a malware removal tool such as Malwarebytes is also a good idea. Thirdly, I think it's a really great idea to talk about it. Sometimes people are embarrassed when they fall for this kind of thing, but your coworkers might fall for it too, and they might be getting the very same email that you just fell for. Also, if you have IT, be sure and let them know so that they can reach out, look over your computer, and make sure there isn't any additional threats lurking underneath. There are also some ways that you can protect yourself before you fall victim to this, and these are becoming increasingly important as these threats really ramp up in volume and sophistication. Number one, as we talked about, please be suspicious of emails, especially ones that look like they are from one of any number of major corporations that you might deal with that are creating a sense of urgency. So if you get an email from your bank that says, you've been hacked, you need to be really suspicious of that kind of email. Make sure that you look carefully at emails that contain links or attachments. Secondly, and a really, really great method of protecting yourself is enabling two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. They are variants of the same concept. And essentially what they'll do when you enable two-factor or multi-factor on your email account or any other web service that allows it is they'll ask for your cell phone number. Then you'll get a text message with a code that you'll have to enter when you sign in from a new device, or in some cases every 30 days or 45 days. What this does is it provides an extra layer of verification, and theoretically, that's something that only you would have. So your cell phone is on your person. So even if someone out there got your username and password, they still wouldn't have your phone to receive the code that's going to allow them to log in. I'm sure many of you have enabled two-factor or multi-factor on banking sites, maybe on any other financial services that you have. If you don't have it on your email, it's a really great idea to go ahead and enact that. And I know that either Blake or Adam at SKC will share a couple of links for how to enable that on common email systems. Thirdly, be sure and confirm information. So if you get that email from your boss that says, hey, I need you to transfer something right away and I don't have time to talk about it, call your boss. I mean, it is the easiest way to verify whether this request is legitimate or not. If you respond via email, chances are you're going to be talking to the person that's trying to scam you. So it's always a good idea to use some other means, whether it's in person or on the phone, in order to verify that the request is legitimate. We're also going to talk about viruses a little bit today. Viruses used to be a nuisance. You would get a virus and they would pop up a lot of things at you, or the virus would slow down your computer, or do something like that that was disruptive, but not world-ending. Nowadays, viruses are getting very sophisticated, and they are all generally financial scams. Those are ransomware and data exfiltration types of viruses. And those are the ones I want to focus on today. Ransomware, if you haven't heard of it, is a type of virus that encrypts key files on a computer, your computer network, and uses those as leverage to extort money out of you. The purpose of a ransomware virus is for you to know that it is there because they want you to pay them ransom. So ordinarily, they will start encrypting your system if you get this type of virus. And then you will get a big, bold, obvious pop-up that says that you have been hacked or you have been somehow compromised. And that the only way you can get your files back is to pay the ransom. A lot of times you'll see that your files, maybe the icons don't look right, or you'll see that there's a strange file extension, that bit after the dot on the file names. Sometimes there's also a text or a web document that shows up all over your computer that says read me now or something similar like that. These are all hallmarks that you have a ransomware style virus. And this is a critical situation. If you think that you have a ransomware infection, you should take immediate action. The easiest way to stop ransomware, if you know that you have it, is to turn your computer off. It will stop it in its tracks because your computer has to be on for the computer virus to run and encrypt files. When you first get the infection, it's going to start encrypting your files in the background, but eventually it will become obvious. And after it gets done, or maybe in tandem with encrypting the files on your desktop, it's also going to look at other network devices that are available to your computer. So that may be file servers if you're in a office environment. It may be if you have OneDrive or Google Drive as a desktop application, it may look to try to infect those files. But it is not going to stop until it gets to everything that it possibly can, because they want as much leverage as possible. The best way to recover from this sort of thing is to restore those files for backup. And it's an excellent example of why it's really important to have good backups and to test them. I think it's really important to say that you really should never pay the ransom. People do pay it, and they sometimes get their files back, but it enables this kind of behavior. This industry has grown in popularity among the scammer type folks, and they're learning that they can make really good money off of it. And what that does is encourages them to make more sophisticated software, more dangerous software, and it gets more people into that field. Not paying the ransom is extremely important. Sometimes it's illegal to pay the ransom. You can also contact the FBI if you believe that you are a victim of ransomware. I believe that they have a program for that as well. A more modern twist to the ransomware idea is called data exfiltration. And what they will do in this case is, perhaps before encrypting your files, or perhaps they won't encrypt your files at all, they will try to copy off as much sensitive data from your computer into a cloud service that they control as possible. This is just another means of ransom. So what they're going to do is threaten you that they have your information, whatever sensitive information you might have, and that they will release it publicly or on the black market if you don't pay. It's very important to keep your computer up to date and to have good antivirus software to try to protect against these things. But frequently, ransomware is distributed through the very kinds of emails we talked about earlier. So it's a really good idea to be very, very diligent about your email security as well. I also want to talk about red herrings a little bit, or what I call red herrings. And red herrings are an attempt to trick you into thinking that you have a virus when you don't. And these are a really interesting variant that scammers use from time to time. So you may be on, your favorite news site or some other, normal website that uses ads. And all of a sudden you get directed away from that website and you get directed to a different site that has a big old flashing message that says your computer is infected and you are going to be responsible for any damages it does, and you need to call this number right now. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to call a number, and then they will try to put remote access software onto your computer so that they can use it as a part of a botnet, or they can harvest information off of it, or do any number of other things. Be very suspicious of a big flashing message that says that you need to call somebody. This is a really good time to call IT and see if it's legitimate, to restart your computer and see if it shows back up, to run your antivirus software. Another one that people get sometimes, we've had some clients get this one, is a phone call from, say, Microsoft or some security vendor, and they're going to say that the same sort of thing, that your computer's been infected and it's doing damage, and you're going to be liable for the damages if you don't act immediately. A lot of times these come in like at 4 a.m. or maybe 11 o'clock at night. They're relying on you being sleepy and under duress in order to comply with what they're asking you to do. So again, be very suspicious of this kind of thing. You really shouldn't ever get a call from somebody asking you to remote into your computer. And Microsoft is never going to call you and say that your computer is infected. So be aware of this kind of call. If somebody says that they're from Microsoft at 4 a.m., just hang up the phone. So that is the overview of the types of threats that we're facing today. There's a pretty wide variety of vectors of attack that these scammers are trying to get you to fall for. But many of them are preventable. And again, enabling multi-factor authentication, keeping your antivirus software up to date, and your computer security updates installed is very, very important to keep you safe from this sort of thing. I know that Jenny, you said that you would like to have everybody enable their cameras and microphones for the question and answer session. Is that correct?
That is